be a man or woman of your word.
Mm,
You know, I mean, if you give somebody your word and tell them you're going to do something, by golly, do it. Don't, you don't back down from that. And I've always said, I still believe in, the handshakes,
yeah.
a bond. And if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do my dead level best to do it.
Welcome to the Business Coffee Hour with William Garay Jr. Today, my guest is Representative Ed Thompson, and I want to thank you and appreciate you for your time. I know that the session is coming to an end, but I've lived in Pearland for a few years now, and I've always seen your billboard. So it's really nice to put and feel the energy that you bring into a room
Thanks.
into person. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And so, as you guys know, we're kind of taking this dive into what leadership is. And one pillar of the community, especially here in Brazoria County and in Texas, has been State Representative Ed Thompson. And I'll share his bio in some of the comments because it is long and it is distinguished. So congratulations to you. That's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
So I have to know, what led you to pursue this public service?
That's a really good question. I mean, I've always enjoyed helping people. I'm in the insurance business. And I know people maybe not relate to that, but the greatest thing in the world is when you've got someone probably at the worst time in their life and you're able to help them. You're able to help them if they're in an auto accident or their home's been damaged or those sorts of things. So it's something I've always really enjoyed doing. And I had a family friend, his father was on a school board when I was a kid. And I always, admired the fact that, he was giving back to his community. And I said, one day I want to do that. I want to be able to give back to my community. And, Pearland, I came to Pearland, I didn't know anybody. I mean, I literally took over part of an agency that had been here, but I didn't know a soul. So Pearland was very accepting and just such great people. And so it really motivated me to want to get involved. And so I ran for school board here in Pearland, and that was my first elected position.
Right. And we had Mr. Jim Johnson on from the Pearland Chamber, and I say that you served with him as well.
Right. Yes, I was a chairman of that board at one time, and then also with the Pearland Economic Development Corporation. I was the president of that when I left after 6 years, and then I ran for city council. And spent some time on city council before I became a state representative.
Wow.
Yeah.
Through all these endeavors, how have you managed to balance your home life, your work life, and then you got your political life, right? There's like a triage.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. I mean, I'm very blessed. My wife has been just so supportive of everything I've done. In fact, I laugh and tell young people, as if they're not married, I'll say the way to find a really good spouse is to tell them that you're going to run for office and tell them they've got to go knock on doors for you. And if they do that, you got to keep her. So yeah. We went through our first election, and we knocked on probably about 30,000 doors, and she was right alongside me. And in fact, I laughed and said a lot of people would come up to when I was out there for people to come to vote, and people would say, "Well, I'm here to vote for you, and you better be glad your wife's not running against you, because I'd vote for her." So she's been a real rock, when it comes to this, and has just really sacrificed a lot. Most spouses would not do that.
Right. When I hear you speak of her, it gives me something to strive for, right? Because we're still under 10 years of marriage for my wife and I, and I see when you speak of her, this the deep admiration and the deep respect you have for her.
Yeah.
How do you continue to do that?
Well, I think, the Bible says we're to treat our wives as we would, the church and Christ, and hold them up the same way. And I try to do that. I really try and do that, because I believe it has something to say about who I am as a man. And I want my children to see that. I want my children to to know how to treat their spouse, not only a wife but a husband as well, and I
Yeah.
think it's important.
I had this big realization not too long ago, a few years back, and when I had seen a therapist, and they said, for me, for a long time, I've always said I wanted to be a good father, and then the therapist says, how can you be a good father if you're not a good husband?
Right.
And that was a big light switch for me. Like maybe I'm focusing on the wrong things.
Right.
Uh, so I know you have your own kids. So how have you I love how you have modeled that relationship with your spouse, and it comes across pretty clearly. So what is it about the balance between the legislature, your work life, your home life? How have you been able to keep your kids a priority through all that?
Well, I mean, I didn't really, I didn't run for the state legislature until after my kids were already
Mm,
grown. So I really, most of what I did here locally, they were, high school age and
okay.
that sort of thing. I didn't do it when they were young. I didn't feel like that would have been the right thing to do. I just felt like that there was a point in sort of when they got to the age where I could kind of take that time to do that. Once they get to be teenagers and driving, they don't care. As long as you're there to give them some money, they're good. But no, I just felt like that it was important for me to be there at home when they were there and be a part of that till they got to a point where I could, do some things that I'd always wanted to do.
That's interesting. As you spent time within the legislature, have you noticed that your priorities have changed at all as your kids change? Like, has your everyday life kind of molded the way you see your policies?
Well,
Just in general, not like
yeah,
particulars.
I think it's certainly a balancing act.
Mhm.
It's we're driving back and forth to Austin, and and that's a challenge, and we have to be at the legislature, and when we're there, it's from the time we get there until the time we you know get out of there. So it's a really stressful kind of schedule that we have to keep when we're up there. But I try and keep that in perspective. And when I leave there, I try and leave there and then try and be a husband, be a father, do what I need to do when I'm not actually uh, you know up there in the legislature.
Right. I describe it a lot to my business partner here, like in seasons, and my wife. Like right now, that's just the season we're in. It's baseball season, it's
Yeah,
softball season.
yeah,
It's going to end, and things will mold. And
that's
so I'm
right.
sure you go through your legislative
Oh,
seasons the
sure.
same way.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah. When we're in Austin, we have an apartment there, and
Mm,
fortunately, my wife can go with me,
right.
um, and so that makes it really really nice. But there's been sessions where she couldn't, and I had to, uh, you know, we had kind of a long distance, I guess you'd say, relationship. I was up there during the week, and she was here, and you've got a lot of things that you have to get done. You have to rely on them to help you with, and having a small business, I have that to deal with as well. So I've got team members there that I've got to
Hmm.
take care of, and so it gets to be pretty. You feel like you're kind of torn in three or four directions. It's like it's kind of tough at times to keep everything straight.
Right. And I think we all deal with that, which is
Sure.
what's very humbling to hear you say that. We all kind of deal with how do I manage all these things that I'm
Yeah.
trying to juggle at the
No.
same time.
Yeah.
But you did mention small businesses, and what it seems like a big buzzword for us. I guess it's because we're in the space as well. But everybody is interested in trying to create their own business. So what are some of the bigger challenges that you see that small businesses face in Texas?
Oh wow. Yeah. Well, first of all, finding really good people is really tough. The job market has really tightened a lot, and the after COVID, so many people now, seem to want to just work from home or work part time or don't want to work, and so it's a real challenge to find people to work in the business. And then you've got challenges with in the insurance business. It's a tough
Mhm.
business. I mean, it really is. So a lot of competition, and try and take care of our clients and make sure that their needs are met. And it sometimes you're dealing with situations where might have a claim and you're trying to help the customer with it, and you're in between them and the company. And so it can be challenging at times.
Right. And you're right. There are a lot of challenges, especially as a culture shifts. But what's something that you've seen that's kind of stayed the same throughout your time within business?
I mean, the one of the things that people that I have, I try and, look for someone that's got a servant's heart.
Mm,
Um, I always laugh and say, I can teach anybody the insurance business, but I can't teach them to have a servant's heart. If they the kind of person that likes to take care of people and help people and that sort of thing, those are the kind of people I look for. Look for those kind of folks. And, like I said, that they can learn the insurance business. That's the
mhm.
easy part. But having that real passion to help folks is what you really look for.
How can we how can we learn to develop our character? I think that's what I hear you saying is because we talk about it a lot too. The soft skills that we learn
Mhm.
as being a veteran, it's about learning your people and caring for them.
Sure.
What do you think are some ways that we can kind of like dig into that? Because it's service obviously is one way. Do you have any other ways to kind of really dig in?
Well, I think it's being a person of integrity. That old saying, uh, what you do when no one's watching, I think is important. I try my best to um, treat people the way I want to be treated, but also I try and do what is the right thing, and I'll let the rest of it fall where it will. A lot of people try and cut corners and do things, and I'm just not. I don't do that. I'm straight up honest with people. Sometimes they don't like that. They don't like what they hear, and I don't do it in a meaner. Try and be as polite and as nice as you can be about it. But I want them to understand, that there's certain things that you can and you can't do, and I think that I try and keep that in perspective, and it's always served me well. I mean, the old saying, if you tell someone the truth, you don't have to remember what you told them. So
That's exactly
I try
right.
my best to do that. So, I've always tried to live by that sort of mantra.
Did I see it correctly that you spent some time as a referee?
Yeah, I officiated high school football for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How would you say that the sports has
Oh,
kind of influenced your leadership
oh
style?
wow. I can't even, we could spend a whole podcast
Yes.
talking about that. I learned so much about dealing with people in a really, really difficult situation where really the pressure was on. I used to tell my crew, I said, when things really get heated up out here, we got to be the coolest people on the field.
Mhm.
We can't let the emotion of the game get involved. We have to, you're out there trying to call the game on both sides of the ball, and you got a coach that might be in your ear and screaming and hollering at you, and you try and, you know, kind of block that out and do your job and call the game by the rules. And you're not always going to please everybody. I said, thing about officiating, half the people love you and half the people hate you, and that changes every 2 or 3 minutes. So, but I think it really taught me a lot about being patient with people, not losing my
Mm.
cool, listening. I always tell people, and all the time, I said, God gave us 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. I try my best to be a good listener. I try and be. I think it's important that you listen to people, and the fewer words that you can use, the better. I think that's also another really good way of doing it. I think at times, you can, just by body language and kind of looking at someone, not saying anything can kind of diffuse sometimes a little bit of that. And sometimes you let people just talk, I mean, people, coaches that just hollered and screamed and jumped up and down. I didn't say anything. And I say, you through, coach? And he, yeah, I'm through. Okay. So here we go.
He did that.
And a lot of times I tell you another thing I've learned I learned from that was, if you go over there and say, hey, coach, I missed that. I know I missed it. I'm sorry. Well, what are they going to say? So sometimes just telling people you're sorry is a really good way to diffuse a situation. You say, hey, I'm sorry. I mean, I missed that one, or I didn't do that. I should have done that better,
I love that, the ownership. And we had Mayor Cole in here last week. And one thing that he said too was when the city kind of came across that miscalculation.
Yeah.
How do we make sure we broadcast the same message? How do we stay calm? And I see you exemplifying some of the same traits, and what we shared with them was, in the military, we say calm is contagious.
Yeah.
If you can emulate calm, then you will also get calm back, especially when it comes to our kids.
Well, and you can make some really, people make some really bad decisions when they're not calm, when they're, I try my best to not make decisions when I'm in a really tough situation. I mean, I really try and stop and take a deep breath and think about it a little bit before I say or do anything. And sometimes people are real quick to want to say something or do something, and maybe that's not the best time to do it. Maybe it's better to, wait a few minutes and think about it a little bit.
So is that something that you actively try to do? You kind of take a break and take a deep breath? Is that?
Yeah. I at times, I think it's best to sit back and think about things a little bit before you. Now, some things, certainly you have to make decisions. You can't wait on everything, but some of the big decisions that I mean, when I'm looking at policy, or someone's asking me to sign on to a bill or something like that, I'll tell them, look, let me look at this, let me read it, let me take it in, and I'll get back with you. Because I think it's important that, number one, that I feel comfortable with doing what they're asking me to do. But number two, that I've done my due diligence, and, I don't just put my name on everything. So want to make sure I'm doing the right thing.
So how do we balance trying to hear what our folks are telling us, and what we're trying to get accomplished? So a lot of times, like you mentioned, folks will come to you and holler, and it could be not in their best state. But how do we let them feel like they're acknowledged, as well as trying to get our own things done?
Well, I mean, I think at times you have to just tell people, look, let me think about this, or give me a minute to go through that. I don't like high pressure stuff. I've never been a high pressure kind of guy. I want people to feel comfortable with what they're doing, and I ask the same thing. After I've been up there now, this is my 6th term, so I've got a lot of relationships with a lot of people, and they know how I operate. They know who I am. They know so they know how I'll. It's not really a difficult, not really a difficult dance to do with them. It's not like, I'm brand new up there, and sometimes you can get steamrolled, and I've been around that block,
Right.
So I kind of know how to handle it.
So what qualities do you feel have made you successful in both business and in politics?
Well, that's a good question.
You did mention being calm, integrity, being able to stay cool.
Yeah, I think that, as well as hard work. I mean, I've really worked hard. I know people would think, well, gee, you've got this or you've got that, or look where you're at, and you're doing this or you're doing that, but it it didn't just fall in my lap,
Right.
and I think that's one of the things that, maybe a lot of people, don't realize. I mean, you know, I was at my office working when a lot of people were, at home, with their feet up, or, they were at the beach that day, or,
Right.
they were, and I was out knocking on doors
Mhm.
and, really trying to, so I think hard work is another thing. Having a good work ethic is important. Getting the job done and staying until you get the job done. And that's the way I do, whether it's in my insurance agency or at the state and in the legislature. If I've got to be there till, midnight, I'm there till midnight. I don't walk out on committees because I want to go to dinner or, I mean, if the committee's there, I'm there, because I believe it's important for me to represent, my district. And I think it says a lot about, well, about me, but it also says a lot about how I serve my constituents when I'm up there.
Mhm. Um, so we're talking about traits, your hard work. What I also hear and see when you're talking about this is your passion for it.
Mhm.
And so for me, Raul and I are on the same boat when we come in. We want to be here all the time, and
Mhm.
it's not because we want to be away from our families. It's because we're very passionate about what it is we do.
Sure.
And so I kind of feel like passion is also part of your
Oh,
values to be there.
definitely.
And it
Yeah.
makes you work hard for those things.
Well, I've always been a kind of person, that gave 100% at everything that I did. When I decided to quit officiating football, um, you know, it was, I realized it was a point in my life where I needed to move on with this. I was going to be in the legislature, and I wasn't going to have the time to put into studying and staying in shape and doing the things I really needed to do to be a good official. And I didn't want to do it. Some guys will hang on and just kind of go through the motions, and that's just not who I am. In fact, I've said when I don't have a passion for this and I don't feel like I'm getting done what I need to get done, then I won't do this anymore either.
Wow.
I think there's, you know, so one guy told me one time, everybody's got an expiration date,
Hmm.
and I think anytime you're doing anything, you certainly can't do it forever, and once you lose the passion for it, once you lose that drive, that where you want to give 100%, then it's time to hang it up and let somebody else take your place.
I love that, and I again, like I said in the beginning, I want to make sure we're mindful of your time.
Sure.
But I have one last question. But before that, I want to recognize you for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
This has been a very great conversation. It's very motivating to me. Very directing. We've got a lot of value from all of this. And so, before my last question, is there any calls to actions that you have that you want to make sure you put out there to the community? Any ways that folks can stay in touch with you?
Well, certainly, we need input. I tell people all the time, I'm not an expert at anything. I just know a lot of experts,
Mm,
and I don't. Another thing I say all the time is I don't know what I don't know. So if people want to get in touch with me, they can, get in touch with me at my legislative office. Here in Pearland, I have my office in Austin. They can call me at my insurance office. I mean, I'm pretty accessible to people, and I want to hear from them. If they've got something that they're concerned about, I've got a Brandy here in my district, and got great people in Austin. They can help, and that's the other thing. I mean, if you surround yourself with good people, that makes a big difference too. I've said, I they make me look good, all the time, and but it's because you try and search out those good people that
mhm.
are, well, they understand the mission. They understand what my mission is. And one of the things I tell them, look, when that constituent calls in or that client calls in, they're the most important person in the world at that point, and you need to treat them, as if they were the only person in the world at that point, because we want people. I can't solve everybody's problem, but I can make them feel good about the fact that somebody does care about what they're going through, and we're willing to try and help them.
All right, I love that. So my final question is, what are 3 lessons that you've learned from your life that you wish you could tell young Ed Thompson?
Well, first of all, when it comes to education, I think it's important that you again, going back to that 100% thing, you put 100% into your education. That's something, no matter what happens, no one can take that away from you. That's something that that's there forever. And if you don't get a good education, that's there forever too. And I'm not saying that you have to necessarily go to college to be to accomplish what you want in life. But you need to be a person that reads, a person that studies, a person that looks at things from a standpoint of trying to get as much information as you can. Because I laughed and said the other day, I said, I'm probably learning more today than I've ever learned in my entire life.
Right.
And I'm exposed to things that, I might be talking about, a roadway with TxDOT in one minute, and then we're talking about nuclear energy with the PUC the next minute.
Wow.
So, there's just so many things out there. And
So you got education as one.
yeah.
You got another 2?
Well, I think picking the right spouse is really, really important. I think that's the other thing. You find you got to look for a good person. A person not necessarily, that. Well, we get into that whole thing, but you just need to find a good soulmate, a person that that you want to spend your life with. That's important.
Yeah.
It's important to it's important to your children, but it's important to everything that makes your life so much simpler. I see people that have made poor choices, and there's always that part about it too.
And then the last one,
Well,
education, make a good spouse.
be a man or woman of your word. If you give somebody your word and tell them you're going to do something, by golly, do it. Don't, you don't back down from that. And I've always said, I still believe in, the handshakes, a bond. And if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do my dead level best to do it.
Right.
And I think being a man or woman of your word is key, not only from a standpoint of what other people think about you, but what you think about yourself.
Yeah. I love those 3 things. I think that's, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining in and watching us. You can give us a follow at Pearland Podcast Studio. You can follow me at W. Garay Jr. And be sure to visit your local Ed Thompson owned State Farm office, or drop a line in, and I'm sure he'll get back to you soon. Without further ado, really appreciate you guys coming by. Love you guys.